Greetings and welcome to the Pransform podcast. I'm your host, Christopher Anastasio, and this is episode 7 of season 2. For today's episode, we have a super exciting guest. I am not understating that. I'm not overstating that. Deepak Bhootra. Deepak, CEO of Jabulani Consulting, is an experienced business growth strategist whose mission is to equip entrepreneurs, sales leaders, and individuals with the tools they need to achieve clarity and confidence in both their professional and personal endeavors. Through his comprehensive business coaching and consulting services, Deepak assists clients in leveraging their strengths and building an effective mindset with the necessary support system. Deepak, thanks for joining us today.
My pleasure. And after that, I usually ask the host, are you sure you're talking about the same guy? Because, wow, that was an amazing guy. I'd like to meet him one day. Chris, thank you very much for having me, sir.
No, absolutely, our pleasure. And I just wanted to start by saying, Deepak, before you jump into your introduction, the audience doesn't know this. We had an outstanding, very fun conversation a couple weeks ago before we recorded this episode. And I think the audience is going to pick up on that as we carry it into today's session. So I'm really excited for everybody to get that exposure to that. And with that, let me allow you to introduce yourself in Jabulani Consulting.
Sure. So this is where I show my verbosity. My story starts 4 or 5 decades ago. It was a very heartfelt night. My mom was in labor. Now, let me cut to the chase. Born and raised in India, been a corporate denizen for 30 years. I worked in the corporate world, 33 actually, to be honest with you. I exited, post-COVID, I started thinking about what was the purpose of my life, right? I had some family loss. I got COVID twice before the vaccine itself. My voice permanently changed, and I actually went through quite an agonizing experience to try to understand. That led me to a very simple conclusion. As you kind of get to a certain hump in life and you go over that, you don't want to go down. You want to keep that hump going to the top, right? What would lift my spirits? So I decided I'm going to become an entrepreneur. I'm going to get into my own consulting. And I actually love the art of selling. I think it's a noble profession. I'm very committed to it. So I ended up actually getting a franchise for Sandler Training for Texas, and that's what I'm building out. During that process, to be honest with you, Chris, I've had a great time working out relationships with founders. These are people that typically are bootstrapped. They're struggling, but they have tremendous ambition. They want to do something. And I've clicked with that. So that's, I would say, 50% of my revenue comes from that domain. Well, not revenue. 50% of my time comes from that. Revenue is still dragging because, like I said, they're bootstrapped, right? Or as one of the founders said to me, I'll make you rich one day, Deepak. And I says, define one day. He says, one day. And he kept quiet, and that's where I am. So that's pretty much it. Entrepreneur coming from the corporate world. So anyone who's in the corporate world who is want to think about founders, I can tell you, I can empathize. I can step into those shoes. I can tell you the challenges. I spend a lot of time with founders, also helping them who come from the corporate world, Chris, who don't know how to sell. They have an idea, but they don't know how to sell, and that's also one of my sweet spots. So I'll try to make sure that as we talk, I weave some of those synergies into this conversation for your audience.
Sure. No, thank you for going through that, Deepak. I mean, COVID, definitely a transformative time, I think, for everybody. I think some saw opportunity in it, some took despair from it, some have rebuilt since then. I think, as a turning point, it makes sense that was where, you sort of found this new path for yourself. And I'm sure there's some influences there maybe we can come back to later in terms of how you see selling and how you see it, being the type of thing that impacts people in a very positive way and not necessarily the way some people perceive it. But let's start with something that I remember when we spoke the first time, it kind of gave me a chuckle. And we'll dive right into the deep end. Why do you call sales the oldest profession? Let's kind of kick it off there and we'll see where that takes us.
So this is such a dangerous way to start a conversation, right? And I'm smiling because the reality is that a lot of people look at sales, and there's something you said earlier that I want to just touch upon.
Sure.
You said there's this nuance or something about sales that people don't like. I'll tell you what that is. It's the fact that every time we think of sales, you're looking at a used car salesperson or some cheesy closing line. Hey, if you don't buy now, the price is going up on Friday. If you buy now, I'm going to throw in free delivery. So we are used to looking at sales from that lens, right? And now we talk about the oldest profession. To me, let's just rewind. The word sales, let's put it aside for 1 second. Selling is nothing more than the exchange of ideas, right? I have something, or I have a product. I would like you to acquire it, and in return, you're going to give me something. Now, forget the fact that you can give me money. Now, go back thousands, 10,000s, 100,000 years back. That's barter, right? That's commerce right there. Now, in that time, someone said, hey, guess what? I have made an extra, I've just killed an extra deer. That meat is going to bad. I'll give you that. Could you give me some skins that I can use for winters coming? That's selling right there for you, right? So I remember being in a sales conference, and now this is the joke that you and I laughed about. And someone said to me, no. Sales is not the oldest profession. I know what the oldest profession is. And then he got that little twinkle in his eyes. And my response to him was that I fully agree with you about that profession you're referring to, but I have a question for you. The person in the profession was selling something, right? What exactly was that person selling? And I just kept clicking, and the guy just hung his head down. The point is pretty simple. That look at this way. I mean, Chris, if you're in a relationship, if you're married, you are selling. You've sold your future to someone and convinced that person to do something with you, right? Commit to you. Yep. And that's powerful, right? So when people tell me I don't know how to sell, I'm like, okay, you're a married man, so you don't know how to sell. The context is you don't necessarily know how to sell because you're thinking too much about selling. In my opinion, to be honest with you, this is the art of selling is very simple. Finding common ground, finding a pain that both parties can resolve for each other. I do not want to live my life alone without someone is actually a great starting point. When you have it in your mind, now you go and find someone who has a similar thought process, right? Then you build out a relationship. Now, I'm a salesperson. Yes, they say a sucker is born every minute, but the reality is that you're not going to sell to that same sucker every minute. You have to understand, and the more you sell, the more pressure you create. So when it comes to selling, it's no pressure. It's about being a trusted advisor. And when I talk about selling, I'm not talking about, let's also bifurcate what I mean by selling. I am selling to B2B typically, selling to an enterprise organization or maybe mid organization. You're looking at people that maybe have 2 or 3 staff, maybe just one person who's buying something. But the relationship that you're discussing, and the word B2B for me, and my grandfather explained this to me, Chris, beautifully. Belly to belly, not business to business, belly to belly. I want you to think about that, and we're going to come to this later as well, because with AI, everyone's asking me, sir, the AI SDRs, Deepak, I hear that software is going to call you and sell to you now. And I'm like, yeah, it'll be fun. In fact, I am so looking forward to this conversation, Chris, because in 5 years from now, you and I are going to be begging for belly to belly, the human touch, the judgment point, that pivot that happens when 2 human beings understand that I've just solved someone's problem.
Yeah.
AI is not going to take that away from anyone for sure.
Yeah.
So long-winded answer, but sir, that's why I call sales the oldest profession on the planet, right? And to be honest, it's not about manipulation. I just want to tell everyone, and everyone tells me, hey Deepak, sales people are very salesy, they manipulate. The answer is no. If you feel that someone is manipulating you, then I assure you that someone is playing games. It's not an honest conversation, just FYI. And to me, every parent that I've met, every teacher I've met, they are selling ideas every day. Come on, our politicians sell ideas, right? That's why you vote, because that idea clicked here. He sold you something. Influence, persuasion, that's sales. That's the art of sales.
This is a great segue, Deepak, for me from our previous conversation too, because we talked about the importance of mindset for sales and how you look at it, and you've kind of been touching on some of that so far. And it resonates in the sense that there's so many examples, just personally, of, on one day I don't want to do something, and there's a small change in mindset and how I perceive, let's say, a need to do something or to make something happen. Now all of a sudden that thing jumps in priority, and it's like the thing that I've got to do that day. So, the mindset shift is something that I think can apply in a lot of instances. How do you, from a sales perspective, how important is it from a salesperson's mindset to kind of shift and look at things the way that you're referring to here? Can you discuss that a little bit?
It's, here's the fun part, right? People tell me that to be a successful salesperson, you have to be a narcissist. And I'm like, okay. Yeah, there are some, but then I'm very sure there are some normal leaders and other people also who are also narcissists. So Here's what happens in sales, right? Sales is typically 3 buckets that I look at. It's either a certain behavior you do, it's a certain attitude you have, and a certain technique you apply. Now, if I just give you a quick explanation, it'll fall into place very soon. Technique is something that you can learn from a book. I'll give an example. Barnes & Noble, walk in, and right there on the shelf there's a good book called 30 ways to break an objection, 7 ways to make a cold call. That's called technique. Behavior is you need to call 30 people a day. You need to record that conversation. You need to then review that conversation. Then you need to repeat it the next day. That's your behavior. And now comes the kicker, which is mindset. And for me, mindset is attitude. Your approach, the way you go through it. So you're starting a cold call, and this is what's happening in your mind because, oh my God, I feel so cheesy calling someone, poor guy, must be busy. I don't know if I call him. I know what's going to happen. He's most likely going to scream at me because he will. How many cold calls have you answered with politeness? Well, hello, I've been waiting for this call all day. Hello, doesn't happen like that, right? Zero. In fact, I would argue, and I don't know why, when I'm in intense work, that's when most of my cold calls come. It's like the network, AT&T picks up, Deepak is stressed, this is the time to call. And it's like green signal goes out, right? So we are reducing the call rates, so please cold call Deepak right now. And I'm like, guys, and I really feel bad. And now let's flip this. Mindset to me is head trash. This is what's happening over here. You have the behavior, you know what you need to do, but something's stopping you from doing it. And that's mindset. Mindset is what I call when you need energy to do your job. That energy comes from mindset. The confidence that you're going to do well at it can be there from technique. And because if you're doing a regular pattern, right? If you speak to people, then you can only get better at speaking. That's a behavior. Now, why do you not want to speak to people is actually where the mindset and attitude is coming in from. So typical head trash that I notice in salespeople is that sales is a ignoble profession. It's manipulative. And you're told that all your life and then you become a salesperson. So somewhere in your mind you're thinking, he thinks of me as a cheat and a fraud. Ooh, watch out. And I'm not even going to touch into imposter syndrome and all that stuff, right? Because that also is a big challenge that comes in. But the biggest mindset and why it matters in sales is as follows. And this is extremely sad when I say this to you, Chris, but you'll relate to it. Because salespeople on typical make more money, maybe 25, 30, 40, 50% more than the average person makes in the US. And I'm kidding you not. That's just at the same level. But if you are actually a good salesperson in a mid-range company or in an enterprise organization, you're most likely making 4 times the median salary of an individual in the US. When you make that type of money, do you know the first mistake that people do, leadership does, sales leadership, sales coaches do is, because you take that type of money, therefore you are stress-proof. No.
Yeah.
If someone is a multi-billionaire but is dying on a road, would you stop giving them aid because of their richness? Or would you carry on with the Good Samaritan approach to things? So the question I'm always asking sales leadership is that, you're telling me that because he's highly paid, therefore he should take your abuse. What? And now let's look at why mindset matters. There is no profession on this planet. Medicine I respect, and I respect it to the highest degree. But from a sales business world point of view, sales is one of those professions where on Monday you're being celebrated because you just killed that dude. What an amazing deal. Then on Wednesday, your colleague loses a big deal and now the entire organization is in a big hole. At that point in the next meeting, everyone looks at you. Deepak, you had a great run, but you know what? Need your help, man. Need you to now help get us out of this. Now Deepak is sitting there thinking, but I did my bit. Why am I being put under this stress? But that's just how sales works. Now you got to take it one for the team. And by the way, let's say that you're working on a deal and that deal falls through. Guess what? Now you got to be making sure that you make your quota. Otherwise, you're going to be put onto performance improvement plan, PIP. It's a thankless job. That is one of the reasons why in sales you will notice that when companies celebrate sales success, they go overboard. That's why you have sales kickoffs. Because at sales kickoffs, you're actually showing to that individual the grief, the misery you took was worth it. And we are now elevating you and putting you on the limelight to showcase you as someone who's delivered. Okay. And that is why salespeople write, I'm a Platinum Club member 4 times over. And here's the funny thing. I've been to Platinum Club twice before I left sales. And both times I left it because of that event. When you go to Platinum and you get your awards and you see your group of peers and you sit there, you actually start asking the meaning of life. And you have to ask yourself, is this what I want to do for the rest of my life? And my answer was no. So at age 33, I had a meltdown. At age 35, I had a meltdown, both times after Platinum Club visits. But I was blessed with some amazing managers. And one of them actually said to me, your mindset is problematic, Deepak. And I'm going to connect this back to mindset for 1 second, Chris. Your mindset is problematic, Deepak, because you are now valuing sales from a non-sales point of view. You're asking bigger questions. Am I excited about it? And he asked me a very simple question. If I were to double your salary, would you stay around? And at age 33, I said yes. But at age 35, I said no.
Wow.
Because after 2 years, you actually realize that, the honeymoon is over. It's the same shit again and again. And by the way, he didn't double my salary. He just gave me 20% increase. But 20% increase was awesome. Why would you ever say no to money? You always take it, right? So the point is, Chris, mindset is a very internalized thing. And here's the challenge. Sales coaches, sales leaders will run forward with technique. Oh, when we were doing that opening with Russell and Co., I noticed that you kind of skipped the discovery process and some of your questions were not well structured. Let's work on that. The question should be, hey, Chris, during the Russell and Co. presentation, right? I was listening to your questions. I have a question for you. Remember that discovery we did that was so awesome and we got the deal? This time I kind of felt that you were not in the zone. Was there something going on in your mind? What was up? Tell me a bit more. That question is going to actually disarm the person, because here he is expecting you to say, what a bad performance, man. What? No. You're saying to them, I have seen a better side of you. But I couldn't understand tell me what was on your mind, because there's always something on your mind. And he said, you know what, you're right, Roger. I didn't sleep much that night. I was just really preparing and agonized over it. And I was actually second guessing myself a lot. And, just before the meeting, I was actually thinking, how should I restructure my questions? But, in hindsight. So the lesson that comes out from that is now, Chris says to Roger something, Roger listens, Roger says to him as follows. Hey, I'm there, man. Next time when you have any of that confusion, let's talk before the session. And also, if I'm in the session, call upon me to help you out. Tell me, say something. Say, hey, Roger, would you like to butt in here? That's what we're here for, to support you, right? Those behaviors is how you help with mindset. Mindset doesn't mean that you always need to be, people tell me, Deepak, I've seen some salespeople, they're always in the zone. I said, oh man, you got to see how hard they work to remain in the zone.
Yeah.
It is extremely hard to remain in the zone. And that is why salespeople have my utmost respect. Long answer short. But, when we talk about mindset, you got to understand, and this is my advice to everyone listening in, the single biggest cause of burnout, Chris, is mindset. If you don't get the right mindset, it's not your technique that's going to stress you out. It's not your behavioral pattern, because you will force yourself to call people. It's your mindset that's going to start telling you as follows. You're not as good as you think as you are. Oh, wow, you won this deal, but inside you knew, Deepak, how badly you were struggling and how bad you were doing this stuff. Imposter syndrome kicks in, self-doubt kicks in. Now, these are all fancy big words, right? And to be honest with you, 10, 15 years ago, I used to think of these words as just snowflake philosophies being thrown around, right? It's when I went through my own meltdowns and understandings, and when I went through, that's one of the reasons I realized mindset is the biggest investment that any organization can make in the salespeople. My advice to sales coaches, sales leaders listening is focus on that, and the rest will set you free.
So that was excellent, Deepak. Thank you so much for that. And I remember when we talked a little bit about mindset, a couple things that you had hit on were things like, focusing on solving pain points, focusing on connecting with the reason for selling in the first place. And I gather, to some extent, you've already kind of addressed that in terms of it's really helping somebody versus selling something to somebody. From the pain point perspective, do you see that as an integral part of that? Like, the more you understand somebody's pain points, the more intimate you can get with what's, causing them difficulty, the closer you can get to that connection, the closer you can get to that point where you understand you're really helping them and you're alleviating those pain points. Is that kind of how you would frame that?
I would frame it partially like that, because the way you framed it, you made it sound like a very personal thing. But here's the fun part. You're spot on. And I'll tell you why you're spot on. Because this is a coin. And we're talking about a situation, and pain can be this side, pain can be this side. I'll explain to you what I mean by that. Pain typically is what happens when we are discussing during the discovery process. So I'm talking to a customer, and I want to know more about the customer. And I also want to know a bit more about what is it that they're struggling with that I can help with. And if you don't understand that struggle, you're not going to be able to match your needs to them, because guess what? Now, a lot of people tell me, but Deepak, aren't you selling for gain then? Here's the reality. Gain is typically something that will come in the future. If you buy my product, this is what's going to happen. That's the future gain. But if they don't have current pain, where their house is on fire, people typically don't buy. Only extremely mature buyers are going to buy that. So people, hence that's why when you spoke about at a very personal level, when we are talking about sales, particularly from a Sandler point of view, the way we look at sales, right? It's multi-layered process. At the highest level, you're actually going to start off with very broad stuff. What do you see in terms of stuff which you believe that you could improve upon? That's how you put it, right? He tells you something. Then the next thing you do is you dig in a bit more. Have you tried anything to sort that out in the past? He explains. Then you tell him, did those work out very well for you or not? Tell me a bit more, right? What have you tried? That helps you because he could talk about your competition. He could talk about what they did. That also helps you understand what you should not do or should try to articulate differently. I hate cold calling because I actually hired someone for cold calling and I got one meeting out of 2 months and I paid $4,000. Aha. Now you know. You're not going to pitch only cold calling. You got to pitch something different then to make sure. So this is why you ask these questions. One of the biggest tests that I always tell the salesperson is keep digging. But don't be naive that I have to ask 9 questions just for the sake of asking 9 questions. Because when done by a novice, it actually becomes painful for the customer because now he's sitting there like, I'm being interrogated. Question number 1. As a human being, how much pain can you take? Then the next question is, as a man, how much pain can you take? And you're sitting there thinking, what the hell is, what? Now, coming back, when I used to do discovery with a customer, one of the things I always wanted to do, particularly with enterprise customers, and this is a big hint to everyone out there, is find his personal pain in solving that problem. And here's typically what that looks like. And that's why when you use the word personal pain, pain can be made personal because you tell, now the person says to you, guys, we've tried to solve this problem many, many times. And I tell you, we've spent millions of dollars on this. And last time my boss told me we cannot afford to screw up again. Aha, right there you found his personal pain, reputational harm. Position it. Now you're not solving this side of the coin, which is organizational pain. Now you're solving his personal pain. Yeah. Now, pain could also be, it could be a simple gain for this guy. That, hey, guys, this project is being watched by every senior exec. We get this right, and I'm telling you the budget's ours. Well, anyone who gets a budget is also a good boy in the books of everyone, right? He's most likely also going to position himself for a promotion. And that's what any good person worthy of salt is going to do, right? Look, corporate world is fickle, right, Chris? If you're going to achieve something successful, then market yourself and take that money and get that promotion because good luck will run out at some time. And I'm not saying that luck is the draw here, right? So that's how I would explain to you the pain discovery process. The ultimate fun is when an extreme rock star salesperson gets success. He gets it because he is tied the organizational pain to a current need, not just a future gain. And then he will also justify the expenditure by explaining the ROI between that movement. And then he also figures out very smartly how to look at those internal coaches and client, specific influencers in the dichotomy, and then figure out a one-on-one strategy as to what makes them look good also in the process. So a lot of people tell me, there you go, Deepak, manipulation. I knew it. I told you guys manipulate. I'm like, no, it's diplomacy. It's actually working the right way. And by the way, what are you on about? If I wanted Chris to upset you, it'll take me 30 seconds to upset you. I can say something right now. But what's the intent of that? Why would you want to say something like that? Why would you disrupt it? So we can figure out a better way to argue, but we argue in an intelligent way. It's one of those things, right? So again, maybe it's a bit of a long answer, but I hope that helps.
No, that was great, Deepak. And I think, like when we had talked previously, I believe we talked about, I think I have the number correct, 7 myths that hold the salesperson back from being successful. Whether it's 7 or something else, can you talk through some of those, just kind of flesh out?
Here's the fun part, right? These 7 actually came into my mind nearly 20 years ago. I was sitting with my boss and he said to me, Deepak, today I'm going to ask you about the 7 things that you are doing wrong and this is holding you back. And I said, okay, so you're looking for 7 weaknesses. And he says, yes, think of it as weaknesses, but maybe they're just things that are in people's mind as to what they should be operating like, but that's not actually how they should be operating like. And I'm like, I don't like this at all. Here's myth number 1 that I was doing, or mistake number 1, but it's become a myth. Because we are told salespeople have the gift of gab. They have the gift of gab, but the gabbing is controlled. They typically use a ratio of 2:1. And I can tell you what, a marriage counselor will tell you, in a relationship in marriage, a 2:1 ratio on the part of the man is the best recipe for success. Maintain that ratio. Don't argue back. Same thing. talking more to close a deal will actually lead you into more trouble. Because I've realized one thing. When you listen, and if you listen with intent, you actually build trust. Because you're allowing that person to get it off his chest. Now, I used to be super smart. What that means is that as you start talking to me, Chris, I know what you're going to ask and where you're going. Right? Here's the problem. In selling, when you interject and tell the customer, I hear you, because I heard the same story from another customer. That guy listens to you, but he's not feeling comfort. He's feeling you don't even know what I was going to say. What are you doing? And you're losing trust and credibility right there. Hence why I tell people, focus on listening with intent. Build trust, build it fast. That the pitch will come, the pitch will always follow. But first, and two, building trust means that you're earning trust. No one gives you trust. You got to earn it. And the next thing that I'll tell you is that here, I need to call 30 people today, otherwise I'm not going to be able to send. And the reality is you need to do 30 right things, not just 30 wrong things. Focus on the right things, the right people. Always tell people, yes, volume is important in sales. Yes, it is. But you cannot sacrifice quality in the pursuit of volume. I need to make 30 calls. And I will tell you one thing that I've discovered. When I ask people, who were the 30 people you called, they give me a list. And I go through the list and I tell them, funny. These 10 people, I would argue, are very borderline your ICP. Why even call them in the first place? Oh, because my boss says I need to call 30 people. Okay. Oh, and that is the honest truth. I'm telling you right now. Myth number 2, that you got to do a certain quantum of work, otherwise things won't move forward. It's not the quantum of work, it's the quality of work. That's extremely, extremely important. People tell me price decides the deal. You will be I'll tell you one thing. The way you explain your process and your product and its benefits actually decides how much you can charge, because that value will set the price, not your price, because you're giving the price too early. If you haven't sold your value, any price you give, no one's going to buy from you anyway. So let me put it to this way. You can get a Mercedes-Benz for $50,000 and I come to you and I say it's $40,000. But if you don't understand, even at $40,000, it might be high for you, right? But you can't see that because you don't understand the value of getting that car. But now if I were to first explain the value to you and then give you a price, you'd be still giving me $50,000 because the $40,000 doesn't matter anymore because you've understood the value. So why? And remember, water flows in the direction of least resistance. When you go to a salesperson and you tell him that, buddy, crunch time, difficult, what you're going to do, the first thing they do is they give discount. Because discounting is the easiest thing to give. That is also why in many organizations, they make it extremely difficult for you to just give a discount. So what they typically do is, they tell a salesperson, hey salesperson, list price is $100. You have authority to go down by $10 max. So I actually checked this and actually realized in 100% of the times, the guys went down to 90 right up front. Why? Because there's this illusion that it makes my life easier. And it goes back to head trash. We've been taught as children, don't ask people how much they earn. Don't ask a woman her age or her weight. So we kind of grew up with that, right? So when you're in selling, you are actually talking about money very candidly, very open. So you need to make sure that you're actually positioning why your product is going to deliver that benefit and say it with conviction. Because if you don't have conviction and belief in your product, no one buys. No one. And I've learned this the hard way as an entrepreneur. Previously, people were buying from me not because Deepak Bhootra. They were buying because Deepak Bhootra and HP. Deepak Bhootra and Capgemini. Once I said goodbye to Capgemini or HP, people said goodbye to me also. So there's this illusion. So your persona, your trust is what you can take with you. You cannot take your corporate monikers with you. Then, sir, you don't need to answer every question. That's number 4. You don't need to answer every question for the simple reason that great sellers ask great questions, and that's back to your comment on pain and discovery. Yeah. If you ask the right questions, now the problem is people decide we have to answer every question or we have to. So it's both ways. Ask the right questions and answer only those questions that matter, and do it in such a way that the answers that you're giving are coming from questions that you asked. Every question should be followed by a question. That's the simple rule that I always tell people. Don't just answer a question. So you say to me, I think your price is very high. It may appear to be very high because we do cater to a certain class of buyers, right? Who tend to be more discerning. But why do you say that? What are you comparing us against? So did you see what I just did there at the end? I brokered it back to a question because this is how you keep the conversation going. If I were to say, I agree with you, And we'll discuss this later on. There's no later on. Now and there. Number 5 is that people believe you spend more time in CRM, you're going to win the deal. Immediately you can see the problem with that. This is not gym, mate. And even in gym, you know, Chris, just because you can do 22 reps at 16-pound dumbbells in each hand doesn't mean you should. There's a structure to it, right? You're either going to do a reverse compound or some pyramid, something you're going to do, right? At some point, you might do one max rep and put it down. Walk away, because your goal at that point is not to hurt yourself also. Right. And this is what is very critical here. Now, look at CRM for 1 second here. It is a tool designed not for salespeople's upliftment. It's actually for management's upliftment. The information you put in there is consolidated by them to see how are my subjects doing. That lordship view of the world. How does that help me sell more? Tell me how it helps me sell more. I am not convinced. Now, at the same time, I don't have an answer as to what must replace CRM. I'm not asking you to replace CRM, but I'm asking you to understand is that tool support consistency is important, but relationships will create commitment. One of the fundamental things that people do, and I hear this all the time, I ask them, where are you in the deal? And they tell me, I'm in sales stage 5. What does that even mean? Sales stage 5 is a stage where the customer is showing commitment. It's a CRM, it's in Salesforce or whatever, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 stages, and that's the language you use. So the question I used to ask them is just stop using this CRM language. Tell me in simple words, why do you feel that the customer is close to commitment? And then he tells me, because the customer asked for this piece of information. And I'm like, okay, have you presented price yet? No. Do you know who you need to present price to? Do you know who's going to sign the check? No. Then how are you close to commitment? Because the evidence that you're looking for is the wrong evidence. So start looking at a process not from your internal CRM point of view, but from a customer's point of view. And here's another trick I can tell you right now. People are going to scream at me. I'm a sales ops guy. I'm a CRM super user. I've done 3 major CRM deployments. And I can tell you so much about CRM and CPQ will freak out. Because remember, when I exited sales at age 35, I went into sales operations. So I ended up becoming a deep process, in-depth guru. And then I ended up doing my doctoral degree also in job satisfaction and organizational commitment of salespeople. So I bring all this nonsense from all over, but I'm a practitioner at heart. The most critical thing that I'm going to tell you will make you cry. We did some research. As your time increases in CRM, your win rate does increase. But at 40 minutes or thereabout per week, the curve starts dropping. It doesn't. There's a law of diminishing returns. So that means that beyond a certain point, writing nonsense in CRM and filling it up with all sorts of stuff doesn't help. Yeah. Now with AI, what's gone wrong is that they're actually asking you to put more nonsense into CRM so that they can give deal scores. They can give a ratio of, they're going to give you the probability of a win. And to me, this is dangerous. Because now what you're saying is that because AI needs more information to become smarter, therefore the heck we're going to grow our AI by giving more information in. The question I'm asking is, forget the AI. Are you putting more information because it informs you or informs the AI? Because there's a cost to it. We pay salespeople to sell. We don't pay salespeople to sit at a computer and type information in. Stop. Please stop. That's one of the reasons why you and I are on this conversation, and you and I can get a transcript of this call. The transcript of this call can be put into an AI. You can get so much from it that will blow your mind. In fact, the transcript of this call with a customer can automatically update a CRM. So let's stop with the nonsense, right? Help salespeople get better at what they do. Number 6, sir, is that salespeople take rejection personally, and they tell you proudly. And in fact, 2 of America's biggest sales people will stand on a stage and say, "Did you lose a deal? Well, yes, you deserve to lose a deal. Because you don't sell properly, right? You have no confidence. You're a loser." And I sit there asking myself, who taught this to Americans? Who told Americans that this is the right way to build yourself up, right? Yeah. Very simple. Rejection is not personal. It's nothing to do with your confidence. It's got to do with how you absorb that information. For me, feedback and a no is just a data point. 8 customers said no. Okay, so I got a data point. Now I know. 9th might say yes, but that doesn't mean that number 10 is going to say no. You can't predict patterns, right? So you got to take feedback. Failure is just feedback, nothing else. You use that as market data. 2, when you get rejected, your role got rejected, not you, the individual. The single biggest issue that people do, they conflate the two. So Chris, if I win with you in a debate, I won on an argument basis. That doesn't make you a lesser human or a better human. And I think unfortunately, where you have a winner takes everything, right? Mindset, right?
Yeah.
Win, lose. That's a problem right there. So I always tell people, the myth number 7, which in those days used to be that as we grow with technology, technology is going to take our job or make it easier. Now the myth is different. The myth now is that AI will replace reps. My answer is very simple. AI is not going to replace reps. Let me repeat myself. AI is not going to replace reps. It is reps using AI who are going to replace reps. Very simple. It's your colleague who will take your job. It's not AI. It's your colleague who is using AI to create what I call augmented intelligence. They have taken that combination, and that augmented intelligence is going to kick your backside 3 times and you won't even feel it. You will know, because you're looking here and there, right? Because what is AI? You look around, what's AI? We don't know what AI is, right? So that's the problem right there for me. And everyone looks at the word artificial intelligence. You got to understand one thing. The winners are not going to be AI. Winners are going to be who are using AI the right way and integrating it into the day-to-day process, but not totally relying on AI to tell them what to do. And I can tell you right now, and I want to talk about this AI thing, but maybe I hold for a bit. Let's kind of like give it back to you. Maybe we just close up with AI later. But there's a lot I can talk about AI, but let's just move on for now. Those, sir, are the 7 myths that I would argue about, right? And I always tell people, just forget your talk tracks. Think about thought tracks. And those thoughts are the 7 myths that you need to ensure that you are going to mitigate. I'm not saying get rid of totally because it's difficult, right? But mitigate.
So Deepak, thank you so much for going through those. It's super. I want to kind of jump to number 6 and peel that back just a little bit more. Sales, I think most people, whether they do it, don't do it, like it or don't like it, would associate it with a pattern or an ability to absorb rejection. I think you kind of touched on that a little bit already. How do you, from a personal standpoint, let's say for yourself and how you teach it or how you coach it, how do you get people to bounce back from that? Let's say they've gotten to the point where they depend on a sale being made, or it's going to make a huge difference whether it gets sold or doesn't. So maybe even a particular edge case like that, and then they get a no, they get a rejection, and it's really hard for them to come back from it. How would you kind of get them over that hump and get them past that problematic mindset?
So, look, I wish I could stand up wearing a tight muscle t-shirt and do one of those things that those sales team trainers do, right? Let's work it out. Guys, if your muscles aren't tearing, so here's the reality with no, right? No hurts. And just stop it. No hurts. The first no, when your mom said that no, I will not let you go out on a date with this girl, it hurt. And guess what? You went through the window and still went on that date, right? So I look at a no as feedback. And I said this before earlier as well, right? What a no is teaching you is that you were not able to show the value. That's it. Sometimes a no also means you may have said and done everything that was correct, but that person was not ready to commit at that point.
Yeah.
And here's what I tell salespeople, one thing. Did you go back and follow up with that person? No. Did you add them to a newsletter? No. Because they took the no so personally that they actually forgot that human being may buy later.
Yeah.
That's criminal. That is criminal. Come on. Think about it this way. My grandfather runs a store. I sit with him. In his store, 10 people buy, but 100 people ask the price, roam around, and then bugger off. But that man never said anything. And I actually asked him why. He says, I've been running this store for 40 years, Deepak. All of them come back at some point.
Yeah.
They all do. Today, he cannot afford it. And that's the biggest revelation for me, was to understand that when you meet someone, and even if you get a no, don't discount that person or say, what does he know? Or I've lost faith with him. How can I go back? What faith have you lost? No. Keep focusing on the value, right? Here's what I also tell people. And this is something I learned personally. Take a short pause before reacting. Please, for God's sake. Please, 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 please. I am emotional. I burst out very fast. And I tell you one thing. If you're getting off a call and you're going to make a judgment call, your emotion has clouded your post-call analysis already. This is typically what I tell people. This is what I want you to do. If you're on a cold call and you're feeling miserable, don't make the next cold call. Don't. Now, everyone hurts from a no. The winners recover the fastest. That's it. That's the secret right there. How do I recover? Very easy. I actually physically get up from my desk. I actually take the dog for a walk. I don't want any human contact. And I just look around and I ask God, why is life unfair? And then I smile because I know no one's going to answer, right? But it's nice sometimes to do that shit. If you see a squirrel, run after that little shit. Run after that squirrel. Scare the life out of it. And I guarantee you'll never catch it, because I don't think that many of us can do that, right? Squirrels are far. Unless, with my luck, which happened to me once, I was on my bike and the squirrel that I was chasing was one of those little fat old ones. Unfortunately, I kind of squashed over its tail and I really felt bad about that. But cold water, believe it or not, I was actually many years ago in a conversation with finance about some cuts they had made to my budget. And at that point, I literally felt my blood rise and I heard a sound like ting. And I'm like, so I said, hey guys, I think this line is weird. I'm hearing this loud pinging sound. Can anyone hear it? And everyone's like, no. Then I got this massive chest pain. And I said, guys, I'm going to drop this call. I'll talk to you later. I walked out and I looked at my admin and she looked at me and she said to me, what? Because she could hear me screaming on the phone call because my door was open and my cabin was right behind her. And she was my gatekeeper. And she said to me, she went and called one of the guys and says, take him right now. So I was very lucky. We went to a doctor that's right next to us. He also happens to be a stress specialist. And he listened to me and said to me, what exactly was happening? Tell me. And I said, I was screaming and shouting. And he says, okay. He then actually told me, today's Friday. Can you go home now for 2 or 3 days? I'm going to give you some medication. I want you to calm down. And he actually gave me a couple of things that I have really told people it really helped me a lot. Number one, I only drink decaf now. Number one, rule of thumb, decaf. If you insist on having a coffee with someone, do it in the early morning. Because he told me, you are already hyper. And coffee is actually triggering you to have more stress and more reaction. You need you don't want that stimulus. Coffee acts like a stimulus. I didn't even know all that. And I went through that conversation with him. Cold water, ice cubes under my tongue. I kid you not. So today, when I know I've got a very difficult meeting to go to, I actually chill, relax, figure it out, and I keep a glass of icy cold water with me. Not ice cubes. That's an American thing. I can't do that. I don't like ice cubes in my water. But the point is, take a sip and I hold it and it works for me. So my request to everyone listening right now is that when you are trying to figure out how to detach this scenario you're in, maybe it's a walk for you, maybe it's going to gym for you, maybe it's having a cup of tea with the wife. Rant, figure it out, come back. And try to keep that rant in 5 or 10 minutes, because over time you will train yourself to shorten the time it takes you to recover.
Yeah.
Now, only a true narcissist will able to recovery in 5 seconds. You can call him an a-hole and he'll have no response to you and he'll be okay. But I will be like, he'll short all, because I don't ask you to do all that, right? Because keep the humanity in you at some point. Now, the last thing I'm going to tell you is, please, rejection is going to refine you. Please don't allow it to define you.
Yeah.
That's it. Now, there's one thing I learned and I really liked it. This is, identity and role theory. In a role, you can be at 0 to 10 score. And in your identity, you can be at 0 to 10. And the trick is that when your role has hurt you, you got to know from a customer. On the role, you could be a 3 or a 5. But then just ask yourself a simple question. As a human being, how am I feeling? And you're most likely going to say, I'm feeling lousy. Then ask yourself, do you deserve to feel lousy or aren't you a 10? If you can figure out how to remain at a 10 and not personalize it, that's when you don't get stress, mindset and other stuff. Now look, I'm not qualified as a psychologist to tell you whether I'm right or wrong. But my argument is pretty simple. And we say this in Hindi as well, it's very well that the word chinta means thinking, negative thinking, ruminating or constantly thinking. And the word chitta means a burial, a fire where you, cremation. So chinta will lead to chitta. So you have to figure this out very quickly. Now, when I first initially heard it, I didn't understand, but then I realized our elders are actually smart people. They have made thoughts over the thousands of years. So certain things that people tell us, right, do good, be good. It simply means that if everyone is doing good and being good, then in general, the world has to be a better place. And I think that's it's a great way to look at things, right? So there we are, sir. That's how I would talk about. Now, how do you coach resilience? Do exactly what I said. Go for that walk, kick a few squirrels, come back.
Yeah.
And resilience is just work on resilience. That's all I'm telling people. Sorry.
But it makes a lot of sense, Deepak. It's kind of like a pattern shift, a way to like literally reset your mind into a different place, and then you can bring it
In
back.
fact, I think that's an awesome word. I would absolutely think of it as a pattern shift or a pattern interrupt. It is, right? Because sometimes, like you walk into a meeting and someone says, that was a bad idea. And you start off by saying, I agree with you. I was thinking about it. It was a very bad idea. This is what we were thinking. This is what went wrong. But here's how I think we can recover from it. Wow. You just said something completely opposite to what they were expecting you to go on the defensive, but you didn't.
Yeah.
That's exactly, you spot on. The pattern interrupt that we're asking for here is rumination. Do it fast, do it at your terms, do it fast, behave in a way that is unexpected of you.
Yeah.
So previously you would have started throwing things around, or most likely, and this is what salespeople do, but they will not tell you, is go out with a bunch of buddies and get drunk for no reason. And come home and then wake up in the morning miserable because it didn't help you at all.
Yeah.
It's one of those things.
Yeah, that's excellent, Deepak. Are there any daily, if we go really tactical, are there any daily habits, routines, kind of behavioral, habits, whatever you want to call them, that a sales leader or a salesperson can use to stay motivated, to stay on track, to stay where they need to be, or to try to get as close to that sort of that 10 level, if you will, as much as possible?
There was, when I first joined sales, my boss was a very interesting guy. He had these rituals, as we call them, and I used to laugh at him. But after working with him for 1 year, I actually realized rituals are powerful. That's why you have rituals in religion. That's why you have rituals in terms of, even at a funeral, there's a certain way certain things happen, right? And it happens because over time people have discovered that's one way to cleanse the soul. Rituals in sales is very powerful, boss. So we spoke about behavior earlier, right? Which are the habits, wash, rinse, repeat. I'm going to make 30 calls. My day typically starts the night before.
Yeah.
My ritual is to sit down and say, what is happening tomorrow? What would success look like? And what are the things that I need to plan for the day after, which I need to do during this day to prep for it better? It's a weird way of looking at things. 2, I also make sure to remain sharp and motivated. My mailbox is always cleaned out the night before. I go to bed knowing I'm at peace. I know what's happening tomorrow. I know that everything that was open is done for the day. You sleep better. It's again self-awareness, knowing how your body operates. I know how mine operates. If I go to bed with something stuck or something, I either park it by doing it, or I park it by putting it into my diary that tomorrow morning for 30 minutes this is the first thing you're going to do, Deepak. And if it's in my diary, it'll happen. Yeah. That's a ritual. At the end of the day, I learned this lesson. I was once sitting at my desk and I was screaming and shouting at the fact that why are people writing so many freaking emails to me? I cannot cope. And my boss was the most amazing guy that I've ever worked for. He walked up and said to me, I can answer that, Deepak. And I said, pray tell. He says, open your mailbox. Go to your sent items. Show me all the emails you wrote. So I showed him. He says, wow, you've been at work only 2 hours and you've written 50 emails. I said, yes. He's like, awesome. Then he says, now show me in the replies how many emails are addressed to you. I said, what does that mean? He says, show me how many emails that you replied to where you were on CC. 50% of my emails I was on CC, but I was replying to them. So he said to me, the universe rewards your own behavior. If you generate truckloads of email, you're going to get truckloads of responses back. And I just stood there for 1 second and I was like, but isn't that profound? Chris, that's profound.
Yes.
And in English, in English, that's where FAFO comes from, right? And I was like, well, wait. And then I realized the man is absolute genius. If I'm on CC of an email, unless there's something factually wrong in the email, why am I replying? And therefore, now, one thing that I do, which I love, is the Eisenhower matrix, right?
Yes.
Stuff you need to do now, stuff that you can delegate, stuff that you can hand off to someone else. It
Yep.
sounds so easy, but guess what? It's difficult to practice. 2, time management becomes, it's actually prioritization, not time management. Because you prioritize the wrong stuff, that's why you never have time to do the right stuff. Simple. So now go and look at your prioritization matrix. You know for a fact, prioritization is that if the girlfriend or the spouse says you need to bring eggs on the way back home, you gotta get eggs on the way back home. Otherwise, most likely you got no dinner and unnecessary screaming, right? So that's prioritization right there.
Yeah.
So that's why that's very important. To me, motivation is not going to happen because someone else is going to rah-rah you. Motivation is going to happen when you rah-rah yourself. And the way to rah-rah yourself is actually know yourself very well and then build rituals around what keeps you happy.
Yeah.
I like walking away with the dog. Keeps me happy. And by the way, keeps my dog very happy. That's how I would say that, boss. And remember one more thing. It's like brushing your teeth. Sometimes you wake up in the morning with a headache. Sometimes you wake up in the morning feeling that the day is just going to be bad. But when I ask you, what did you not forget to do? You'll tell me, oh, I brushed my teeth.
Yeah.
I did go to the toilet. I did have a shower. That's a ritual. Those rituals last, and those rituals, knowingly, unknowingly, now we're going to make the rituals purposeful.
Yeah.
And they're going to be in response to certain things that you're doing. That's how I would put it, sir. Daily habits to stay sharp.
Super, super helpful. I think, as a closing note, Deepak, and you definitely, on 2 other occasions, started to go into this area, and so I want to kind of fully bring it back there. We talked about AI, talked about automation, things like that. Augmented intelligence, love that phrase. With that, first of all, macro-wise, it's creeping into everything, but let's go with sales for now. As it creeps into sales, as people start to see it as maybe a quick fix or a way to make their job easier or a way to offload the pain of having to sell, whatever the case may be, where do you see a potential, and I do think you alluded to some of this already, but like where do you see a potential positive role for it to make the salesperson even better at what they were already going to be good at? And where do you see it harming the sales process, eventually maybe leading to a terminal point for the salesperson where
terminal point. I like this terminal point. To be honest, I ask people as follows. Anything that you hate doing, see if AI can do it for you. No. People tell me, I hate cold calling. I'm like, yeah, well, let AI do it for you and see how that turns out. Right? At the end of the day, AI is pretty sharp at saving time on admin. It can save time on research. Here's what I tell people to do. Take a graph. On this axis, simply write down complexity of work. And on this axis, just write down time taken to do the job, right? Or value added from doing the job, whatever. Then start plotting the things you do. And then wherever you see something which is low value adding but takes a lot of time, give it to AI. Now comes the tricky stuff. Some things cannot be quantified. As an example, trust with the customer. I don't think you're going to give that to an AI. But the activities you do using AI can build trust with the customer. So the customer says to you, in similar situations like ours, how has your product helped your customers? This is what I would do. Human memory can only recall the last 2 deals or 3 deals or 2 case studies. I come back to my desk and I say, okay, this is cool. I open up AI and I say, hey AI, here's the company repository in the knowledge base. Here are 180 case studies. From this, could you identify for me patterns similar to my customer whose profile is this? And here's a transcript of the conversation I had. Create a matrix that explains to me, because my customer's criteria are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Tell me the case study that match those criteria the most and give me 6 of them. 3 minutes later, you're going to have something that you could not have done without reading all 180. Now, don't just stop there. Now go back and actually check those 8 that it's given you and validate that before you just ship it off to the customer, because mistakes happen. As you do that, you will suddenly realize that, wow, answering that customer's question previously used to take 3 hours. It just took now maybe 30 minutes. Wow. That's the type of stuff I keep telling people to do. Look, let me tell you what you shouldn't do. Machines are good at predicting patterns, but only human beings can build belief and trust. I assure you of that. Selling many times is a judgment call. And if you're going to trust AI on judgment, then just shoot yourself. It'll be safer. You got to understand one thing. AI to prepare, but humanity to connect. That's my slogan.
Love that.
That's my slogan right there. And another one only I can take is that AI can write all the words on the planet, but only you, Chris, can make those words matter in the B2B sales. That's another slogan. And honestly speaking, to me, that's it. And if you understand that and you actually understand that AI is my slave, I am the master. You know, people tell me, Deepak, human in the loop is very important. And I'm like, oh. The human is the loop. Why am I in the loop of an AI?
Yeah.
I am the center. The AI was supposed to be a means to the end. It became the end. How did it become the end?
Yeah. Yeah.
The next threat that I can tell you right now, Chris, is the fact that people are using AI indiscriminately left, right, center. They're even using it to write emails. Just this morning, I got this amazing, beautiful LinkedIn write-up from someone which I really liked a lot. And I'm going to just see if I can remember it. The guy spoke about something very simply. He said to me, use your AI to write long letters. Use your AI to write RFP responses. I don't care. But when you write a thank you note run by AI, your customer is going to read that thank you note and he'll see the wooden, he'll see the hyphen, he'll see the M dash, and he's going to ask himself, how do I trust this guy if his thank you note is so? He said, that's the problem.
The dash.
What people hash, that M dash. Right now, what people are doing is they are using this to write everything. And I'm guilty of the same also. I'll give you an example. I'm just working on a business plan. And the business plan requires us to partner with someone in India. My customer said to me, can you work with this party in India? And we just worked with the party. And the party today came back and rejected working with us. And they gave us a long list of reasons why they won't work with us. I immediately went to ChatGPT and I wrote a thank you note back to them. But I also asked follow-up questions. And I asked ChatGPT, do these questions make sense?
Yeah.
Or if there is a straightforward answer, show me the straightforward answer so I can make my question more intricate.
Yeah.
And I did that and I sent it back. I got a reply back from those guys telling me, okay, wait, hold on. Let's get on a call. Why? Because the AI has allowed you to now ask and articulate in a better way to do it. And what that guy was trying to say was that use it for those type of scenarios. But for heaven's sake, don't use it for the stuff that is you. If you're sending a thank you note, just do it.
Yeah.
Now, you can make it really cool. I'll give you an example. So there's a guy that I admire a lot on LinkedIn. He writes beautifully well. So he said something nice about me. And he says, and thinking of you as I'm having my first cup of coffee. I replied back and I said, here's a poem for you, Gavin, with each stanza starting with G. Gavin. And I went to ChatGPT and I says, hey, Gavin sent this lovely note. I'd like to respond back to him. Help me write a poem with Gavin as the first word in the first line, in every line, and make it an ode to coffee and make it an ode to great humans. Gavin fell out of his chair. He said to me, this is so thoughtful, Deepak. I did tell him ChatGPT was a godsend. But the point that he was making was that you did something different, even though it was a ChatGPT. How many people would have thought of doing something like that? So this is back to the same thing. Use AI, but use your thoughts to drive AI.
Yeah.
I would like AI to give me a poem. Then customize the poem if you want. I customized the poem to coffee. Because he said, I was thinking of you having a cup of coffee. So Gavin, I made sure coffee came into it. And then I brought humanity into it. And I just kept forcing AI to think about it in that term. I would argue it's my doing. It's my poem, but it's now fleshed out and streamlined using AI. That's what I would say, sir. So that's my AI guidance to everyone. Augmented intelligence comes from absorbing AI and making it part of your persona. You use AI not to replace your humanity, but to enhance your humanity. Think of it as a force multiplier. That's the best way to close this conversation off, sir.
Well, first of all, it was a great story about the poem. And I think that, it almost goes back to what you said about intent. Your intent behind it, the creativity of the request.
Chris, you nailed it.
Look it from there.
Intent.
So.
If your intent is noble, and I've always said this, right? If your intent is noble, intent is clear. AI, not AI, anything you do will always flourish. And that's when it matters. And that's, people call it vulnerability, people call it being human. I don't know. But I do like the use of that word that you just had. I agree with it.
Thanks, Deepak. Well, Deepak, first of all, let me thank you again for the conversation. I think our audience is going to find it extremely valuable and helpful. Where can the listeners find you online? What else do you want them to know about you before we wrap things up?
No. I think this is by far the longest podcast recording I have done for now, for sure. I wish you luck in the editing process. I wish you luck. Looking for me is pretty easy. My mom always used to say that if you're looking for a drug dealer, just go to the darkest corner under a bridge and shout out loud, weed. So for me, if you're looking for me, just go out loud onto LinkedIn and just write Deepak Bhootra. You'll find one Deepak Bhootra. There's actually 6 of them, but I am the one who is old enough to say proudly that I got Deepak Bhootra in the URL. The poor other guys have got Deepak Bhootra 666, Deepak Bhootra 999, Deepak Bhootra -AZ29. I don't know what happened to the poor guys. And so I'm on LinkedIn. I literally live on LinkedIn. In fact, my wife calls LinkedIn my second home, and she says LinkedIn should be charging you $1,000 minimum. I'm like, nope. The Indian in me says I'm crying even with what I pay them right now. So I'm maximizing my full. So LinkedIn. LinkedIn, I think there's nothing else. And even if you go online and if you were to just write my name, you get so many things popping up about me, podcasts, interviews, discussions, right? So LinkedIn, send me a DM, more than happy to respond. That's about it. That's how I would say finding me is pretty easy, LinkedIn.
Perfect. Well, Deepak, we're conspiring on this end to have you back in the podcast at some point, so we'll figure that out one way or the other.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for being with us today and sharing all these insights with the audience. Can't thank you.
My absolute pleasure, Chris. Thanks for having me, sir. And thank you for allowing me to ramble on and on and on. I really appreciate that. Especially, I'm well trained with my wife. She keeps telling me, I just wish more people would stop you from rambling on and on and on. Because the world tolerates you, but I cannot.
Well, we're not going to edit any of this out. So it was all valuable. Thank you again, Deepak.
Bravo, sir. My pleasure.
Bye-bye.